Okay, here's number 9 from section 10.1, and again we wanted to find the first and the second derivative. And these are kind of from my notes. I don't think I wrote down the formulas, but you can refer to the formulas in number 7. But these were our two equations. X equals minus the square root of t plus 1, and y equals the square root of 3t. So we just take the derivative. Took both derivatives, so dx dt was going to be negative, and then it's just going to be 1 over 2 times the square root of t plus 1 times the derivative of t plus 1, which is just 1. And the same thing, we use our square root rule, so it's just going to be 1 over 2 times the square root of 3t times the derivative, that is 3. And then we use our formula dy dx is dy dt over dx dt, so dy dt was this, 3 over 2 times the square root of 3t, and dx dt was 1 over 2 times the square root of t plus 1. That's a t plus 1. I hope you can see that. And then we can simplify that by inverting and multiplying, I guess is just as good. So we have 3, and then we've got 2 over 2 just becomes 1. We have a negative sign, and then we have 3 all over t plus 1. So you invert, multiply, put that on the bottom. That's what you get. And then we did some simplifying because we had, combine these and can do some simplifying. So we put these both under, I put a 3 in here. 3 times t is under the radical. The square root of 9 is 3, so this becomes 9 if you put it in the radical. Just so we can simplify this a little bit, because we are going to have to take its derivative again, so it's good to simplify it. And because we could get the 3 in here, so we end up, again, putting 3 under the radical is a 9, and then the square root, well, remember the quotient of the square root is just the square root of the quotient, so we could rewrite this as 9t plus 9 over 3t. So we can do some simplifying. 3 goes into both those, so that removes the 3, and then we could break it up into 2 fractions. So I think this is one way to do it. There's probably another way to do it, but that was the derivative. Any of these forms would probably be acceptable. If you want to rationalize the denominator, you can do that also. Now comes the hard part. We got to take the derivative of this for the numerator of our second derivative, and then we already have the denominator of our second derivative. It's right over here, dx dt. So this is the derivative with respect to t of dy dt, and this is dx dt. So we take the derivative of this. Again, I use the square root rule. Follow all this, a lot of arithmetic here. So that's just going to be negative sign, and that's going to be 1 over 2 times this square root here, times the derivative of the inside here. And the derivative of this was just going to be negative 3 over t squared, and I just brought it up as a negative 2. So that's the derivatives of this. And on the bottom we just had the dx dt on the bottom here, which is already given as this. We already found that. Okay, and then we try to simplify all this, and it's okay. There's a lot of stuff to go on here. So we're just going through the simplification process, and we could invert and multiply, so we could have this goes on the top, the negative, and then we got the negative 3 t to the minus 2, and then that's going to go on the top because we're going to invert and multiply to t plus 1. And on the bottom we've got this, just this 2 times the 3 plus, or the square root of 3 plus 3 over t. These twos won out, so we've got 3, then I put the t squared in the bottom. So we had 3 times the square root of t plus 1, and this was in the bottom. And I put this t inside. I took one of the t's and put them inside as t squared. So I had 3t squared. And then the t squared over t just became 3t. So it simplified the bottom, got rid of the fraction on the bottom. So then we could write this square, remember again, the quotient of a square root is the square root of the quotients. So we could do some simplifying here. We can follow all this arithmetic. So we have minus 3t in front, and then this simplifies because t plus 1 over t plus 1 becomes 1, so we've got 1 over 3t. And then what we did was we rationalized that denominator. So when we rationalize the denominator, we multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 3t. So we had negative 3 times the square root of 3t all over t times 3t. Here then we can simplify out the 3's, and we have negative 3. And this was t to the 1/2. That's the square root of that. We put the square root of 3 out in front, broke that up so we could bring this down over here, and there's your final answer. So there's a bunch of simplification to get it to look like this. So that's a lot of algebra. Okay. So the algebra was a complicated part. You know, if you had a multiple choice answer, you know, you might come up with something like this, and then you have to get it to look like this. So that's where you got to do your algebra work. Okay, so I think you can follow that. So I hope that helps.